Imagine being a successful millionaire, with the world at your feet, yet still feeling empty. Lindsay Walker has it all: money, status, and power. But as Christmas approaches, she decides to escape her hectic life and travels to a small mountain town in search of rest. What she doesn't know is that in this peaceful place, she will find something she never expected: the chance to rethink everything about life, happiness, and true love. While trying to escape the pressure of her empire, Lindsay meets Thomas, a humble gardener whose simplicity and kindness make her question everything she ever knew about success. Could true happiness be found in life's simple things? Stay with us until the end to discover how Christmas can change the life of a millionaire and teach that sometimes, love and peace are found in the most unexpected places. Lindsay Walker, with her perfectly styled hair and focused gaze, was the definition of success. At 35, she was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the tech industry, with an empire spanning multiple continents. But deep down, Lindsay felt empty. The constant pressure, endless negotiations, and lack of time for herself had distanced her from what really mattered: happiness. Christmas had always been a time she dreaded. For most people, it was a time of celebration, but for Lindsay, it was just another reminder of the loneliness she had experienced for years. Her friends were all too busy with their own lives, and she rarely had time to connect with anyone, even if she wanted to. Her world revolved around business, meetings, and deadlines. This year, however, she decided to do something different. Tired of her chaotic routine and the loneliness that came with success, Lindsay decided to escape to a small mountain town in search of some well-deserved rest. She needed a space where she could stop, reflect, and maybe even discover if there was something more to life than work and responsibilities. She rented a secluded cabin in the mountains, where the only sound she could hear would be the whisper of the wind and the peace of the snow-covered forests. The town was small, quiet, and far from the pressures of her corporate world. Lindsay planned to stay there for a few weeks, away from everything, without commitments. A break. That's all she wanted. Upon arrival, she couldn't help but admire the rustic beauty of the town, something completely different from the hustle and bustle of her life in New York. Calmed by the tranquility, Lindsay found herself relaxing in a way she never imagined possible. While Lindsay was settled into the cabin, she decided to explore the town a little. She walked through the narrow, snow-covered streets, admiring the simple and welcoming architecture of the small wooden houses. Everything in the town seemed designed to offer shelter from the outside world. That's when she saw him for the first time. Thomas. He was in the town square, tending to the gardens of a small park. His brown hair was slightly messy, and his hands, though strong, seemed gentle and careful with each plant he touched. Thomas wore a simple coat and a smile that radiated a calmness Lindsay had never seen before, especially in someone like him. He noticed her presence and, with a warm smile, waved at her. "Hello. I don't remember seeing you around here before. Are you enjoying the town?" Lindsay smiled back, surprised by the simplicity and kindness in the way he spoke. "Yes, it's beautiful. I just needed a calm place, away from the hustle. I think I've found the perfect place." Thomas walked over, stopping beside her. "Are you looking for peace? This town has plenty of that. Things move slowly here, but in a good way." Lindsay looked at him, curious. "And you? Do you work here in the gardens?" "Yes, I'm a gardener here. I enjoy what I do. Taking care of nature gives me a kind of tranquility I don't find anywhere else." He smiled sincerely, and Lindsay, who was used to seeing people always so focused on their own goals, felt a wave of peace seeing how at ease he was with what he did. "It must be nice to live like this, without all the pressure we in the corporate world have," Lindsay said, her voice a little softer than usual. There was something about the way Thomas saw life that made her reflect on her own. He chuckled softly, the sound as pleasant as the surroundings. Well, I don't have a million things to deal with every day. I wouldn't trade it for anything, to be honest. Lindsay couldn't help but smile. There was something different about him compared to all the men she knew. He wasn't concerned with what she thought of him, or what he could gain from her. He was simply there, present and at peace. "Would you show me more of the town?" Lindsay asked, not entirely sure what was driving her to ask the question. Thomas hesitated for a moment, but the smile returned to his face. "Of course. Let's take a walk, and I'll show you the best places for a good coffee and a nice view." Lindsay and Thomas walked through the streets of the small town, talking about everything and nothing. Thomas took her to a small local cafe, hidden on a quiet corner. The smell of fresh coffee and homemade sweets filled the air, and Lindsay felt a sense of warmth that she hadn't experienced in years. The simplicity of the place, and of Thomas's life, was something she had never experienced. Amid the luxury and rush, she never imagined that something so simple could bring so much peace. Thomas ordered a black coffee and a slice of homemade apple pie, and Lindsay followed his lead, ordering the same. As they savored the warm drink, he told her more about his life. How he had always loved working with the earth, and how his life in the small town was marked by his peaceful routine and the small pleasures, like taking care of the town's square garden and helping the locals with their plants. "I never wanted much more than this," Thomas said, stirring his spoon in the cup. "Life here is simple, but I feel fulfilled. The work, the people, the nature. These are the things that make me happy." Lindsay looked at him with a soft smile, almost with envy. She, who was always caught up in meetings and business trips, had never stopped to consider if she was truly happy. Her work defined her, but she no longer knew what truly made her smile from within. She was so used to the pressures of her life that she barely remembered what it would be like to live with more ease. "It sounds beautiful," she said, more to herself than to him. "I never thought something like this was possible. My whole life is filled with commitments, trips and work. I've never had time to really live." Thomas watched her closely, as though seeing through her facade of a successful businesswoman. He knew that behind her imposing appearance, Lindsay carried an emotional weight. Something deeper that couldn't be seen at first glance. "Sometimes, what looks like success isn't all that really matters, Lindsay," he said softly. "I've seen many people who, even with everything, still feel empty inside. I think what really matters is finding happiness in the simple things." Thomas's words struck her more than she would like to admit. She felt a mix of guilt and curiosity. What would her life be like if she left behind the frantic pace and allowed peace and the simple things to fill her days? She didn't know, but Thomas seemed to know how to find joy in the little things. Something about him made her want to discover what that meant for her. In the following days, Lindsay continued exploring the town with Thomas. They quickly became friends, and the time spent with him made her feel different. She was no longer as concerned with business or the next big contract. The small town and Thomas's tranquility made her forget, for a few moments, the weight of her corporate life. However, as she got closer to him, Lindsay began to question herself. She knew that her life as a businesswoman, her commitments, and her career were, for the most part, what defined who she was. But what she felt with Thomas, even though it was simple and silent, seemed much more genuine than anything she had ever experienced. "Thomas, aren't you afraid of not having more?" she asked one afternoon, as they walked along the train tracks of the town, surrounded by snow-covered trees. "Of not having a career, a successful life, a built future. I know simple things are important, but what happens when needs and dreams start to feel more urgent?" Thomas looked at her with a soft smile. "I understand what you're saying. But for me, happiness doesn't depend on how many contracts I've closed or how much money I've earned. It depends on how I feel about what I do and who I'm with." I believe that if you seek what truly makes you happy, the other things will fall into place. Lindsay sat on a snow-covered stone, her thoughts confused. I never knew how to live like this, Thomas. I was always taught to seek more to be more. But at the same time, I feel like none of it brings me peace. Thomas sat beside her, his calming presence filling the space. Sometimes, less is more. The peace you're looking for is in living in the present, Lindsay, not always wanting more. Love, happiness, they're not found at the top of a mountain of achievements, but on the road you walk along the way. Thomas's words were beginning to make sense to her. With each passing day, she started opening up to the idea that maybe what she had been seeking for so long wasn't in wealth or status, but in human connections and true happiness. Christmas was approaching, and the mountain town was starting to prepare for the celebration. The streets were lit with small, colorful lights, shop windows displayed festive decorations, and the cold air brought a feeling of magic and nostalgia. For Lindsay, who had never truly embraced the Christmas season, all of it seemed new and exciting. She was beginning to fall in love with the town and the simple way people lived there. Thomas, as always, was an integral part of the festivities. He helped set up the nativity scene in the town square, decorated the gardens with lights, and organized donations for the less fortunate families. Lindsay, who had initially been reluctant to get involved, found herself drawn to the genuine way Thomas celebrated Christmas. There was no rush, no commitments. There was only a desire to do good and enjoy the small moments. On that Christmas morning, Lindsay decided to participate in one of the local traditions. A community lunch where everyone gathered to share a meal and exchange simple gifts. The idea of donating her time and being among such genuine people made her feel disconnected from the corporate world and more connected to those around her. Thomas invited her to help serve the meals, and she, with a shy smile, agreed. It was in that moment that she realized how at peace she felt there. The people were simple, not concerned with status or money. What mattered was the company, generosity, and the spirit of community. Lindsay was moved to see how those small gestures meant so much to everyone. "Do you see?" Thomas said, watching Lindsay as she served food to the children. "Happiness is in the simplest things. Look how happy these kids are with so little." Christmas isn't about expensive gifts or lavish parties. It's about love and togetherness. Lindsay felt a wave of gratitude and an inner peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. She sat at the table and allowed herself to be there, in the present, sharing a simple yet meaningful moment. As Christmas approached, Lindsay found herself more involved with the town and Thomas's life. They spent more time together, and though they hadn't openly discussed it, a silent attraction grew between them. Thomas, with his simplicity and generosity, seemed to be everything she never knew she was searching for. He made her feel alive in a way she never did with the glamour of her corporate world. But at the same time, Lindsay felt torn. She liked the town and the way Thomas made her feel, but her life was in New York. Her career, her commitments, and her identity were intertwined with the success she had achieved. Doubt consumed her. Could she abandon her life as a millionaire to live a simple life, free from the pressures of success, but at the risk of losing everything she had worked for? One afternoon, while walking through the gardens of a local property, Lindsay finally spoke her mind. "Thomas, I don't know what to do. I never thought I'd feel this way, but I don't know if I can change my life that quickly. I have a world out there, a career I've built. I don't know if I can give all of that up." Thomas looked at her with a serene expression. "I'm not asking you to give up who you are or what you've achieved. But have you ever stopped to think that maybe what you've built isn't all you really need to be happy?" Lindsay sighed, the weight of doubt and decision pressing on her chest. "I don't know. I've always thought happiness came with success. But here with you, I see a kind of peace I've never experienced. It makes me question everything I thought was important." Thomas smiled softly, his expression full of understanding. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in climbing higher, but in being happy with what you have. Maybe you need to stop looking ahead and start looking around, see what's right beside you. Those words of Thomas echoed in Lindsay's mind. She felt he was right. But there was still fear, the fear of losing everything she had built. The next morning, Lindsay woke up early, her mind full of conflicting thoughts. Christmas was coming to an end, and with it, the feeling that she was drifting further and further away from the life she knew. The small town, the tranquility, and especially Thomas made her feel something she hadn't realized she was missing: inner peace. But the idea of leaving behind her life as a millionaire, her career, and the status she had built over the years made her hesitate. She didn't know how to move forward without feeling guilty for leaving everything she had achieved behind. Thomas, for his part, seemed to sense the dilemma Lindsay was facing. He knew she was beginning to see the value in the simple things, but he also knew she couldn't change her life so quickly without confronting the internal conflict it would bring. He wanted to be by her side, but he also understood that she needed to make her own decision, no matter how difficult. That afternoon, after a peaceful walk through the town, Lindsay pulled away from Thomas for a moment and sat alone, looking out at the snow-covered horizon. She knew she needed to make a decision, but she didn't know which path to take. Thomas is right, she thought. Maybe happiness isn't at the top of the mountain of accomplishments, but in the things I've left behind. In the people and in love. She picked up her phone and made a call to the headquarters of her company. During the conversation, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also the feeling that she could no longer continue at this frantic pace. She needed time to rethink her life. The decision was being made, but the fear was still there, like a shadow that refused to disappear. On Christmas Eve, Lindsay felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the town prepared for the festive night, she and Thomas spent more time together, helping decorate the town square and organizing presents for the children. The joy on everyone's face, the satisfaction in every simple gesture, made her feel part of something bigger, something genuine. Christmas was giving her more than she ever imagined. That night, during the community dinner, Lindsay observed everyone around her. The town, with its twinkling lights and warm human spirit, felt magical. Thomas looked at her from afar, with a serene smile on his face, and Lindsay realized that, in that moment, she didn't want to be anywhere else. "I've made a decision," Lindsay said after a long silence. She approached Thomas, and he looked at her, curious and hopeful. "I'm going back to New York, but not the same way. I need time for myself. To reorganize my life. I won't let my career be everything. Not anymore." Thomas smiled with a gentle and understanding look. "That's a great start, Lindsay. I've always known that happiness is closer than you think. Sometimes, it's just a matter of stopping and seeing it." Lindsay smiled back, and in that moment, she knew she had found something more valuable than any success. She had found peace, love, and true happiness in the small things, in people, and in the simple act of living in the moment. When the night ended, Lindsay said goodbye to Thomas, but not with sadness, but with a sense of lightness. She knew her life would never be the same. Christmas, which once symbolized loneliness, was now a symbol of new beginnings. Christmas Day passed, and Lindsay woke up the next morning with a heart lighter than she could remember. The small mountain town, with its snow-covered landscapes and the fresh morning air, seemed like a promise of renewal. She looked out the cabin window, watching the first light of dawn reflect off the snow, and a sense of gratitude filled her chest. Her life now seemed clearer, less full of pressures and expectations. Thomas appeared to say goodbye. He was smiling, but his eyes showed a touch of sadness, as if he knew things between them would change. Lindsay felt the weight of the farewell, but she also knew she wasn't saying goodbye forever. I know this isn't a final goodbye, Lindsay. I know you have so much to offer the world, but the most important thing is that now you know happiness comes from within. And that will make all the difference on your journey, said Thomas, with the calm and wisdom he always exuded. Lindsay looked at him, her smile sincere and deep. I never imagined that such a simple life could teach me so much. You've shown me what really matters. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I will do things differently now. They hugged, and Lindsay felt the peace she had never imagined she could achieve, even amidst all the uncertainties of her life. She knew that what she was leaving behind wasn't just a town, but a way of living, a way of seeing the world. Before leaving, Lindsay took one last walk through the town, breathing in the cold air and clearing her mind of everything that had disturbed her. She knew life would still have challenges, but now she felt ready to face them with a new perspective. One that included more love, more presence and more gratitude. When she reached her car, Thomas walked her to the road. Take care of yourself, Lindsay. And remember, happiness isn't in more achievements, but in fully living what you already have. The rest will fall into place. Lindsay smiled, her eyes shining, and waved at him. Thank you, Thomas, for showing me that happiness isn't out there, but inside us. She got in the car, and with one last look at the snow-covered town, drove back to New York, with a lighter heart and the certainty that this Christmas would be the first of many new beginnings. The future no longer seemed so uncertain. Now she knew that love and simplicity were the true keys to happiness. And so, after so long living in pursuit of more and more achievements, Lindsay discovered that the true treasure of life is not in status or wealth, but in simplicity and genuine connections. By Thomas's side, she realized that happiness lies in the small things, in acts of kindness, and in the peace that only true love can bring. Has Lindsay finally found the balance between success and happiness? And what does the future hold for her and Thomas? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. This year's Christmas marked the beginning of a new journey for Lindsay. If you were moved by this story of change and self-discovery, like, share, and leave your comment below. We want to know what you thought of this beautiful Christmas story. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more touching stories like this. See you in the next video. Millionaire goes to a mountain town for Christmas. Her encounter with a gardener will change her life forever.